He kōna ipurangi tēnei nā te reo irirangi o Aotearoa.
Kia ora, no maira, and welcome to this, our Māpuna podcast. Ko Julian Wilcox, taku ingoa, it's great to have your company. This week on our Māpuna podcast, our guest is the one and only Stacey Jones, a legendary Kiwi and now coach of the Kiwis, the New Zealand Rugby League team. We speak about Stacey's whakapapa in the game, particularly focused on his grandfather, the late Manga Emery. We also talk a little bit about the importance of Stacey's whakapapa to him now and the importance of culture in the Kiwis Rugby League team and how he will approach implementing a culture in his own way for the benefit of the Kiwis as their coach this year. And yes, don't worry, I also ask Stacey Jones, assistant coach of the Warriors, whether or not 2024 will be the Warriors' year. Just a clue for all those Warriors fans out there. I think you're going to like the answer to that question. Nō reire te wi whakarongo mai, ki tēnei whakaputanga a Māpuna. This is Māpuna, our podcast and our kōrero with Stacey Jones. It's a very special episode indeed of Māpuna this week. We are joined by, and I know this word gets thrown around a lot in sport, but I think it's particularly true of our guest this week. It is, of course, Stacey Jones, the recently announced coach of the Kiwis, legend in his own right of the game of league, an institution of New Zealand sport, and can I say, of Māori sport as well. Stacey Jones joins us on Māpuna now. Stacey, tēnā koe.
Kia ora, Julian. Thanks for those kind words, and very happy to be on your show.
Really appreciate you making yourself available. I found it really hard where to start this kōrero with you, but I wanted to go back, and I'm sure you've had this before, and I'm not sure what you make of it, but I remember my father talking about your grandfather, the great Manga Emery. And the reason why I thought I'd start there is because when you mention the name Emery, and in particular your grandfather's name, to lots of my father's generation, it's like they still get tears in their eyes. and when they mention your name, they say things like, well, it's no wonder Stacey ended up the way Stacey did. So if you don't mind, I wanted to start there with your grandfather, because it seems to me that's a still very much a source of pride for you and your whānau.
Yeah, most certainly, Julian. He was a huge inspiration for me. Got myself and my brothers into the game of rugby league, growing up playing it from 3 years old when I first put my first footy jumper on for the Ponsonby Ponies, and he was certainly the inspiration and gave me that real desire to, having that dream of pulling on the black and white jersey. And I still have fond memories of him teaching me a couple of things. We played in different positions. He was a front rower, so he played in the tough part of the field, and I was a halfback that played where it wasn't so tough. So, but he certainly was a massive inspiration to our whole whānau.
I remember a kōrero you did one time where you talked about your grandfather. What came to mind for me was that they say there's a phrase that apples don't fall far from trees. Was that always the case, do you think? Was there pressure there for you to, I know you're in different positions, but was there always a little bit of responsibility from the whānau that someone would follow in your grandfather's footsteps, and as a result of talent and skill and all that stuff, it happened to be you?
Not really, Julian. Look, there was certainly no pressure from him or anyone else in the family. And when you talk to people, especially the older generation people, and you listen to them talk about what he did on the field, especially back in those days where it was a lot more tougher, a lot more harder, a lot more physicality than it was when I was playing. you could certainly get away with a lot more, and I could see him sort of doing that on the footy field. But from the pressure on me as a player to get to those levels, there certainly wasn't that. But he actually taught more about fishing than rugby league, and that's probably my biggest love of my grandfather, was more the away from the sporting field. He'd give you a few tips here and there, but it was more life skills outside of the game that I really loved that he gave us, not only myself but all my other cousins and brothers.
Stacey, what do you think he would make of you being the Kiwis coach?
Oh, look, he'd be super proud. And when I had to go through a pretty grueling process to get the role, and he was a massive part of my presentation, that I grew up the game around him. And he taught me a lot about the culture of the Kiwi jersey, the connection that it has. So that was instilled into me at a really early age. So it's something that I want to take into this new role of mine, being the Kiwis coach, that the culture and connection has been with me for such a long time. And it's important that we continue it. We certainly try and we hold our past players in a high place. And, one day, these present group of players will be past players, and they will understand that too.
I do want to talk more about the process that you had to go through before the official appointment and your naming as coach. But I've heard this a lot about culture, not just within teams, but particularly with the Kiwis. You talk to people like, say, for instance, Adam Blair, who I've had the privilege to interview, Tohu Harris and people like that, James Fisher Harris, and they talk about the same thing. When we talk about culture in the Kiwis, what exactly do we mean by that, Stacey?
It's a real strong bond that, when you pull on that black and white jersey, when you go onto the footy field, there's a real sense of this group is a resilient group, play a physical game. But when you're off the footy field, there's a strong connection that they do things a lot together when they're in camp. Probably back in when my grandfather was playing, even when I was playing, in the earlier days, it was you'd always go to the pub and the whole team would be there. Now the boys, they probably don't go to the pub as much as what we would have done, but they go to the movies. They go to the shopping mall, and you would see the whole team go together. And that's what it's like. They just, the groups that I've been involved in, the group that is there right now, the connection is strong because they just enjoy each other's company, especially when you're playing all of them play in a tough competition in the NRL, and most of them play for Australian clubs. We only have a handful that play for the Warriors. I know last year it was only Chance, Nickel Clockstad that was part of the Kiwis group, and they're around a lot of Australian players and other Pacific Island players, but when they come into camp with the New Zealand team, they're all around Kiwis, Māoris, and Pacific Islanders and that, but they're all Kiwis, and they love that, and I loved it when I was playing, and I'm sure, back when my grandfather, when they started, that's what they loved the most, was being around, their own people.
Yeah. And you'll probably note the irony of me naming people like James Fisher Harris and Tohu Harris and Adam Blair, most of whom, and yourself of course, most of whom have some origins in the north. Particularly you with your Ngāpuhi whakapapa. When I asked about the culture question, I also wondered for you what place Māori heritage, Māori culture, and yes, we have a range of players, as you mentioned, Pacific Islanders, Pākehās and others, who form the foundation of a Kiwis team. But what role do you think Māori culture, Māori heritage plays in the overall culture of the Kiwis? How does that manifest?
Yeah, well, we're very unique, and that's from a New Zealand sporting background, and the rugby league community is no different. That we do respect our culture, and we do have a lot of Māoris in our team, and even if they're Pacific Island, they go to school. They've grown up in schools in New Zealand where where Māori's a big part of their life. And they understand that, and it's important for us to understand, our people and all of that. But, the Kiwi jerseys, not just Māori, but I know that the Pacific Island people in the group really respect Māori culture because they've been brought up on it too, especially when they go to schools and they're in sporting teams. So, the connection and culture is very strong. And I saw some really good stuff that we did last year. I was fortunate enough to be an assistant coach under Michael Maguire, and we had Stephen Kearney come on board as a culture and leadership person. And the first thing we did was a porphyry, and a lot of these people involved in the group had never done that before, because some of them had grown up in Australia, and then we did pepeha, and it was just made the group that much stronger and connected, because a lot of the things that came out when they spoke was based around whānau, it was based around that, and then they could get a connection, and there was because we had the New Zealand A team with us last year, and when we did the pepeha, Stephen Kearney said, look, go and grab 6 people that you can connect with, what they spoke about, and then you see all the Ngāpuhi boys go together, the Tainui boys go together, and then it was really neat. Actually, it was quite cool that, and then you sort of just build off that. But it was a neat thing to do.
Stacey, how will you look to approach developing that culture now as the coach? Because as you say, and I think that became obvious to fans watching the Kiwis in the way they played last year. Actually, that huge result last year with the Kiwis and the Kangaroos, it seemed that everything gelled together well. Perhaps, having a really strong, forceful leader in the shape of, James Fisher-Harris as captain and Kaya of the haka and all that kind of thing. But it seemed that the team and the squad had really hit a good place, getting that right both on and off the field last year. Is this year and your role just going to be a little bit of an extension upon that? Or do you think you might take a bit of a different approach, bring a bit more of your own flavour to it?
Oh, look, there'll certainly be an element of that, but I'm very fortunate enough to have strong leadership in there already, and I'm fortunate that I was involved with them last year as an assistant coach, so I've got a pretty good idea of how the group is working at the moment, and I'm, like I said, the leadership of James Fisher-Harris, Jerome Hughes, Joseph Tapani, Nelson Asafa Solomona, Charles Nuka Klokstad. There's a really strong group of leaders there already, and I know that the way that they go about things is going to be a real help to what I want to do, and I'd be a fool to go in there and want to change too much, but I've got to add a little bit of my flavour. But like I said, I'm very fortunate. We've got a squad there that did some really special stuff last year. Especially in that final in Hamilton, where it was a wonderful build-up that we had leading into that final, and Michael Maguire did a wonderful job moulding the team, but the players, the ownership of the players was something that I saw that was really special.
Though a great result in the end, but not seamless, as you know, Stacey. That game in Australia caused many fans, including myself, a little bit of anxiety, if I'm honest with you. But certainly got the result at the end, although that seems to be the way with the Kiwis. I mean, I remember the World Cup, when we won the World Cup, same thing, big loss.
Yeah.
In preparation to that final, and then again a huge result in the end. It just seems to be the way with the Kiwis, is that when people most underrate the Kiwis, it seems to be that's when the Kiwis team excels.
Yeah, and you're spot on, Julian, with what you're saying. The result in Melbourne wasn't what we were after. However, it probably taught us a couple of things, and we knew we didn't have to change too much. We made minor adjustments as a coaching group with Michael Maguire, Nathan Kalis, and myself. We just said, look, we've just got to make sure that these boys are ready to go come next week, because the final's back home, and we freshened them up. Really, we didn't throw too much information at them, because they knew already. They knew what they had to fix, and we made minor changes. So, ideally you'd want to win every game you play, and especially when you're playing against Australia. And in the end, it was probably a blessing in disguise. However, Julian, this team, the expectation now is to try and win every game of footy that we play, and with the players that we have, that should be the expectation. I know, if you talk about the All Blacks, everyone in New Zealand knows their expectation is to win every game they play, and that's because they've been so successful over a long period of time.
Yeah.
And, that's where, we'd like to get this Kiwi team in a position where it doesn't have to take a loss to Australia to get us up for the next one. So we want to be in a position where we feel that, we can be the best team in the world, and there's a group of players that are capable of doing it.
Stacey, you mentioned a couple of names. So obviously we know Michael Maguire gets appointed as a coach, and therefore the position becomes available. You mentioned another assistant coach, Nathan Kalis. The name of a great coach, Wayne Bennett, was mentioned in communications around that these people were going to be applying for the role as the coach of the Kiwis. Why did you apply?
It was always a dream of mine. When I finished playing, I went back and coached my local club, Point Chevalier, just to really help out. Me and my good mate, Owen Goodenbiel, we went back and did a couple of years of coaching there, and then I was given an opportunity to get into the Warriors, move into the Warriors pathway system at a junior level. And as a couple of years went on, I thought maybe one day this could become a reality. And then Michael Maguire called me into his coaching squad when he first took on the role back in 2018 as an assistant. And Michael always wanted to promote people within the group that he looks after, players and coaches and other staff members. And it was around that time that I thought, I could have a crack at this one day if it became an opportunity. And the opportunity came when Michael took the role with New South Wales, and I thought, well, why not? I've been an assistant with the team for 4 or 5 years now, so the opportunity came along, and I went through the process of applying for it, and I had to present to a panel and to the board, and I was very fortunate and humble enough to be given the role.
How important, and this may be too close to the bone, so just tell me if it is, okay? But how important is it for former players to have someone who has been a Kiwi? Because there's a saying, great players don't often make great coaches. But how important is it from a Kiwi's perspective to have a former player who knows the team and culture be the coach over someone else who, and I'm not having a crack at anyone here, but over someone else who isn't a Kiwi, isn't a New Zealander?
Oh, look, that's a very good question, Julian, and, the decision wasn't mine, so I don't have to try and answer that. But look, I'll try and answer it as best I can. And look, it didn't matter to me who else was applying for the role. For me, it was about me putting my best foot forward and getting out of my comfort zone too a little bit here. It was a lot of hard work that I had to put together some stuff, and the New Zealand Rugby League went through a process of asking tough questions and that. So for me, again, as a former player, look, I'm not too sure. I was fortunate enough to have Gary Freeman as a coach for a couple of years with the Kiwis, and Gary was wonderful to have around and to learn from and his experiences, because I actually played with Gary in the Kiwis. So there's no one in this team now. I'm way too old for. There's no one in this team that's still playing that when I was playing. So half of them won't even remember me playing. But look, I feel that there is a connection there, because we like I said at the start, I think we've got to really know where the jerseys come from, know the players that have been there in the past, and because knowing that one day you're going to be one of those players, and that just builds strong bonds.
I noticed you said tongue in cheek, none of them will know who I am or who I was as a player. You know that's not true, right? Like you're one of our greatest Kiwis, if not one of the greatest Kiwis, the greatest Kiwi. You know that, eh?
No, I don't. But anyway, you're too kind. Yeah.
I'm not trying to blow. I just think there'll be people sitting there going, "Jordan, what are you doing? This guy knows." It's obvious to many people you are one of our greatest league players ever. Certainly our greatest halfback. And you mentioned Gary Freeman and others, but I think it's beyond debate that people accept that that's the case. Is it uncomfortable for you to hear that kind of praise, I guess, for want of a better word?
Oh, look, no, not really, because I just try and deflect it. But look, There are things that you got to face. You face it. You say, thank you very much, Julian, for the kind words. I really appreciate your support, and let's move on to the next subject.
Okay. Point taken.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on then. I want to wind back a bit. And sorry for circulating around certain things, but there's just things that have popped up on my mind as we talk. There was a guy that I went to school with at Te Aute College who was a rugby league player and ended up being our centre for our first 15 at Te Aute. His name was Billy Weepu. And when you were playing secondary school league, the two names that were mentioned the most by me to people who played league in secondary school, particularly in Auckland at that time, were Billy Weepu and Stacey Jones. None of us knew who you were when we were at Te Aute because we were a rugby school. But then all of a sudden we saw you and thought, oh, gee, Billy's going to make mincemeat of this fella. You know, junior Kiwis and under-18s and all that kind of thing. Did you understand the fact that you were that people recognised and knew who you were at a young age, and what was that like to deal with when people would come and watch and just see this guy running, rings around people like my mate Billy Weepu?
I had to avoid Billy, actually. Lucky I was quick enough because he's a big man, Billy. So, we all, when you grow up with that era, everyone knows at the same age, who the good players are running around. And I was very fortunate enough, again, playing for Auckland in age grade competitions and going away and playing teams like Wellington, which is who Billy played for, and Canterbury, and the rivalries were strong, and they're exciting times, and I remember going to tournaments, and I was again lucky enough. I played with some wonderful players in my age group, Nigel and Joe Bluggener, Henry and Robbie Paul, Owen Gudenbiel, Logan Swan. We were all about the same age, and we had a good crop of players coming through our system at the time, and then. Wellington, I think Billy was playing up about 3. I think we're the same age, but he was on the scene a lot earlier than what I was. I think he was playing 3 years up in those competitions. So he was, certainly one player that everyone knew about. But, I was very fortunate enough that I played with some wonderful players that carried on in their careers.
But you were named captain of the junior Kiwis, I think, at 17 or 18. What is that like for someone so young to have the mantle of leadership thrust upon them? Yeah,
again, Julian, I was lucky enough that I was able to play senior football at a young age and then go away to tournaments. So, and we had a strong group of players that I played with, and I know I played alongside many of them for a long, long time. So, being in a key position was probably important to take on that leadership role. So. It's something that I really enjoyed, and I really loved growing up playing the game, playing rugby league, and I had a lot of really good mates at the time and still are today. So my memories of playing rugby league at that age are very special to me.
I think I'm right. I think it was the 1994 Māori Sports Awards. I think it was 94. It might have been 95, where you were named as the Junior Sportsman of the Year, Māori Junior Sportsman of the Year. And I think
95.
It was 95. I think in Wellington, I think the hui was in Wellington. And I think Shane Jones got up to do the acceptance speech. And he said something like, it's nice to be acknowledged as not Ngāpuhi, but as Te Aupōuri. Oh, wait, hang on. No, Stacey's the Ngāpuhi. Never mind. And he carried on. How much awareness did you have of your own? Because I know you were brought up in Auckland. How much connection and awareness did you have of your own whakapapa as a young athlete and as a young Māori?
Yeah, not a strong linkage. I've got to be honest. Even though I spent most of my time up in the far north, what my grandfather did to me up there was work the farm. As soon as I got up there wasn't much time to do much else. So chasing around cows and sheep on the farm. So he used to think we were city kids that had no idea about country life. So, look, I got a strong connection. Te Aupōuri, Te Rarawa, Ngāpuhi, in the far north, our Dalmatian Māori connection there. Shane Jones, my dad's first cousin. So the connection there is a lot stronger than it was when I was a youngster, only because I'm trying to understand a lot more of it today. My grandfather, Manga Emery's Ngāti Maniapoto, so from the Tainui area, and then I got my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, has connections to Ngaitahu, so it's a little bit diverse.
Oh, wow.
There.
I didn't know your Ngaitahu connection.
Yeah, through my mum's mother. So,
do you know the name, Stacey, in the marae? And...
I don't know the name of the marae.
Oh.
She was a tapsel.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gee, there's an interesting mix of whakapapa there, eh?
There is. There's a lot of stories that I can't probably tell on here around, relationships and that. But
Don't worry, Stacey. We've talked to many people and they've probably told them before, so it's all good. No, but I understand there's whānau kōrero and then there's whānau kōrero. But I know, for example, I think in the early 2000s you got quite involved, or you were particularly keen to get involved in education. I think you and Buck actually, Shelford, did a little bit of work around promoting economic educational opportunities for Ngāpuhi. How did that happen? Where did that come from?
Look, it started, to be honest, Julian, I didn't have a lot to do with it. It was more Buck, but it was more around, I did a little bit of TV work when I finished football with Māori television, with Te Arahi Maipi on the Boil-Up show, and I got to know Buck on that show, so sort of struck up a little bit of a connection there through that, and it was more through Te Arahi that relationship came about.
One of the greatest brains of rugby league, Te Arahi Maipi, with none of the skill. I think that's a fair summation. You'd agree with that, wouldn't you?
Yes, I would. He's good to have conversations.
Yeah, good. I'll keep that in the cut. We won't edit that out. Hey, and I just want to follow up, if I can, with those connection bits, because you said that you're learning more about it now. I mean, how important is that for you? You know, as a papa, part of whānau, someone that Māori look to and will continue to look up to, particularly now, given the role you have as the coach of the Kiwis. I mean, how important, from a personal standpoint, is it for you to continue to learn and to understand and undertake that journey?
Yeah, it's very important, and my upbringing didn't allow me to do that, and I look at my kids, and they have a lot more understanding than me, and I'm embarrassed by that, and I know that I've got to get more out of my comfort zone and learn a lot more about my whakapapa and that, and sometimes it's hard where to start from, but it's been good. It's been the last few years has been really good for me to get a bit more of an understanding around things, and unfortunately for me, none of my grandparents are around anymore. When they used to tell stories when I was a kid, I was probably in one ear and out the other, because all I wanted to do was get the rugby ball in my hands and get out on the field and get on the paddock. So, but it's the last few years has been a really good learning curve for me. And you're spot on with what you're saying with the new role, how important it will be.
How do you manage all the time, Stacey, trying to do that? Be the Kiwis coach, still got the connection with the Warriors, continued talent identification. I know you're still very much involved with things like Māori tournaments and the like. I mean, the time management must be crazy.
Yeah, I'm very fortunate. Again, I use the word fortunate quite a bit. My role at the Warriors will allow me to do my role with the Kiwis, because I can, current coach keeps me active. When we're in Australia, I can get to go and meet other players, Kiwi players. When they come here, I get the opportunity to catch up with them, and because our campaign is at the end of the season, we don't have campaigns during the season, so it's mainly just making sure I'm planned with everything I do. There's a lot of Zoom meetings. The New Zealand Rugby League are 200 metres from the Warriors headquarters. So since I've been appointed, I've probably had more meetings at the New Zealand Rugby League than what Michael Maguire would have had at that time because of my proximity of where I work. So yeah, so it's all sort of fallen into place, and the key to it all Julian, for me, is making sure I'm planned, making sure I know what's going on, making sure I know the schedule, my own schedule, the Warriors schedule, the New Zealand Rugby League schedule, and I think that's the key to it all.
I mentioned briefly about the talent identification. Obviously, as a Kiwi coach, that's going to be even more important now. There's that ongoing tension between those of us, of New Zealand extraction, for want of a better way of putting it, living in Australia, that ongoing tension between the attraction of playing state of origin versus heritage and playing for the Kiwis. You know, I'm aware of it because we've got a niece who's just signed on with the Broncos, brought up pretty much in Queensland, although obviously, you know, Māori and therefore from Aotearoa, who swears to us she's going to play wants to keep her New Zealand connection, which is great. But that's an issue. It's been an issue for a long time. Yeah. What is your approach to that? How do you think that will go? What do you think you'll do to try and ensure that we can retain that talent that we know, and even some of those that we don't know are ours?
Yeah, look, we're lucky. We've got good people on the ground in Australia. So Stephen Kearney is a selector for the Kiwis, and he works for New Zealand Rugby League in that talent ID, especially for the younger ones, the younger players. We've got Ezra Howe, based in Gold Coast, who's the Titans head of recruitment for them. So he's a Kiwi selector as well. So he's got his ear to the ground everywhere he goes. There's guys like Brent Webb, Isaac Luke, who are going through a pathway system at the moment too. And then, based here in New Zealand, we've got Tawara Nikau, Adam Blair, and myself. And there's lots of other people that select for the Kiwis too. So, and Australia's not our big. It's a big problem for us to make sure that they want to play for the Kiwis rather than Origin. But the other big one is the Pacific Island nations, Tonga and Samoa. What they're bringing to the table. You know, we played at Eden Park, last year, and 90% of the supporters were Samoan. We played Tonga, 90% of the Tongans. So the only way we can reverse that is be consistent with our performances and make sure we want to get the players putting on the black and white jersey, which is happening right now.
Yeah, the argument some will make is, no, but it's great for the international game. I guess the ultimate riposte to that, though, is the fact that there's so very few international games at the expense of NRL, at the expense of state of origin and all that kind of stuff, that, the idea of trying to really keep people with the Kiwis becomes somewhat contentious or just becomes a harder thing to do simply because there aren't enough games, which then gets me to the next question. Will we see the return of an Anzac Test at some stage? James Fisher-Harris has come out recently and said he'd love to see it, wants to see that back, thinks it's the right thing to do. You played in a couple of Anzac Tests, obviously a couple more than that, but is that something that might help in trying to retain talent as having an added window or a change in window, or indeed something like the return of the Anzac Test?
Oh, most definitely. These Kiwi boys are crying out for a mid-year test, especially when Origin's on, and that's probably the tricky part for the game. But there should be no reason why we can't play Samoa or Tonga, because you'll pack stadiums out with those two teams. And, but playing Australia's, they're the best in the world at the moment. But, I would love to see the Anzac Test come back and play. But if we can't play that, certainly playing one of the other Pacific nations mid-year is certainly a huge bonus. So the international game is growing a lot. In the last 5-6 years, the emergence of what Tonga has done, Samoa being in the World Cup final 2 years ago, has certainly boosted the international game. And the NRL, there's a strong number of Pacific Island and Māori players in the game now, so it only makes the international game a lot stronger.
The other threat to the Kiwis is the retention of players from other sports, and in particular rugby. I think of a live example, Joey Manu.
Yep.
How... It's a difficult thing to ask, I guess, because, you've only just been appointed, and hello, I'm asking for the answer to peace in the Middle East here. But how much of a threat, or how do you perceive the issue of player retention in the game itself when other sports, in particular for Kiwi boys and in particular for Māori and Pacific Island players of New Zealand descent or New Zealand heritage, being attracted by big money for things like rugby?
Yeah, that's a very, very good question, Julian, and especially a player like Joey who's played the game for such a long time, had a lot of success, and they look to find the next challenge. So sounding like Joey's heading off to rugby, but we'd love him to stay. Hopefully he can have a campaign with the Kiwis if he has decided to go to rugby, that he can have a campaign with us at the end of the year. And look, they're only looking after their family with what they feel is probably the best decision for them, and it's hard for us. It's the game, does set players up for a lot, but the opportunity to go play in France and in Japan, where they're probably more away from the limelight, probably get looked after. The game is probably not as physical where they're going to go to, so they can probably play a bit longer. And you never know. Like someone like Joey, it could be like another RTS where he decides to come back for a couple of years, and the timing could be perfect if he does go for a couple of years and then come back and play in a World Cup and win a World Cup for his country. Something that I'm sure Joey would love to do.
What do you make of that kind of revolving door thing that seems to happen a lot more now? I mean, is it frustrating, given your own history in the game, so committed to this game? What do you make of that kind of thing that seems to be more prevalent now?
Yeah, look, if the player's done really good service to his club and goes with their best wishes and he's done a great service to the country, you can't stand in their way for what they've done, what they do. So, that's at the end of the day, that's business. Is it ideal? No, it's not ideal. But that's the way sport goes. It was probably back in the day. It was it was more the other way. It was a lot of rugby players coming to league, and the tables turned a little bit. But hopefully, the tables will turn again, and we might see some rugby players come and have league a crack. So I guess the sport here in New Zealand, rugby and league, are very in a good place because we all grow up and play a game, and they can adapt to it quite easily at that level, especially some particular players.
Is that why, Stacey, we're seeing things like opening round double headers in places like Las Vegas, so that the game can try and compete more with other sports that are attracting players away, building audiences internationally? I mean, it seems weird to say that without a really strong international sports calendar for the sport, but is that why we're seeing the introduction of things like a Las Vegas round?
Yeah, look, you got to take your hat off to the NRL and what they do. Peter V'landys and Andrew Abner are very clever people, and they know how to promote things. And the Las Vegas thing, was something that came off for them. Already we're talking at the Warriors. We'd love to be a part of something like that.
Okay, good.
They certainly make things attractive for the game. So
I'm glad to hear the Warriors are keen, because that was a part of me going, hang on a minute.
Yeah, that would be I'm sure there'd be a lot of Kiwis that would love to go there.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. Look, I will get hung, drawn and quartered, not just by yourself, but for others if I don't mention the Warriors. Let's start with a really obvious question. Is this, Stacey Jones, and don't forget you're being recorded, is 2024 our year? Just say yes. Just say yes, Stacey.
Yeah, okay. Look, where we came from the year before to last year, we built. There's a really good foundation there of players, and obviously the head coach and Andrew Webster, and I've learnt so much off Andrew in the last 2 years, and I have my whole career around footy, and that he's really been a breath of fresh air to not only to myself but the whole club. We bought some really good players. Obviously, Roger coming back has been a big draw card, and Kurt Capewell and Chanel Tavita Harris. So they would probably, in particular, all three of those players, they could be the missing link that could give us first premiership, But in this game, Julian, you need things to go your way. You need, when I say things go your way, you need to have a healthy squad. There's a couple of teams that can get away with having a few players injured for a period of time, and then there's probably about 15 or 14 teams in the comp that can't. If they get too many injuries, then that you can quite easily miss out on the top 8. And we probably need that. We need to make sure that we're a fit and healthy squad. We need to make sure we get off to a good start and build on what the club did last year. And it's feeling good at the moment. We're in a good space. The players know there's expectation on them, but what we've done through the pre-season, Andrew Webster's really made it clear. Let's face it. Let's face it front on. The expectations there, and let's embrace it.
I just wanted you to say yes.
Okay.
It was a very good answer, Stacey. Look, it really was. Ultimately I just wanted a yes, but that's okay. I completely understand why you didn't.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, good. We got the quote. That'll be on the news in an hour. Finally, and again, this is a long way out. You've only just been announced as the coach, so I don't know why I'm asking this, but it seems an obvious thing for me to do so, or maybe not. I mean, 2026 is a long way away. World Cup year. And people seem to rise and fall. Or actually, maybe not, given, Michael Maguire in the World Cup held on. They had a really good year last year. But it seems that people rise and fall on World Cup performances in most sports. And I know coaches will tend to talk about, building foundations and making sure things are in place and culture and all that kind of stuff. But, is that going to be the point at which you measure your success, Stacey? Or is there other things that you will do from your own point of view to say, yep, that will be the market at which I've done a good job or not? Because externally, people just look at World Cups.
Yeah, they do, but with this group at the moment, the expectation there from last year to carry on. So we're not in a building phase. Possibly, you could have said that if I'd taken on the role after the World Cup.
Yeah.
But there was a year in between, so we're not in the building phase at all. We're certainly heading towards the World Cup, but there's lots of stuff to do in between there. We're going to go to the campaign next year, wanting to win that. The campaign the following year, the international window wouldn't be out yet, but there'll be something on, and we'll want to win that as well. So, and then head into a World Cup. So you're spot on with people being judged by that, but I make my judgment on what we do every day within this group, and it's again the old cliche. It's day to day and making sure we win everything we do every day.
I'm just going through my checklist. Mention your grandfather. Mention Billy Webb, who had a crack at Te Ara Maipi. Look, I think we've done everything I said. I set out to do. Oh, there was only one other thing. But this is particularly an issue in Australia. Maybe not so much in New Zealand sport, but in Australia, which appears has reared its head again, Stacey, around racism within the sport. And the NRL has a really tough position on racism in the sport, but for some reason it tends to come out, and particularly in sports like rugby league. Is this an issue that can ever be solved, do you think?
Look, it's certainly getting stricter with how things were. When you're growing up as a kid, there were things that you could say and get away with, but nowadays, with the way the world is at the moment, with social media and all of that stuff. Look, there's got to be a crackdown on these things. My wife's a school teacher, and I said, well, what if some kid called at your school? What would you do? You'd be in big trouble. Well, we're no different. Rugby league sport is no different. If you say something that's out of order, then you should face consequences. But only face consequences when the truth comes out. But look, there's got to be a hard stance on these things.
Look, I just want to say I really appreciate you taking the time. It's been a long time, and I have no right to keep this amount of time to be able to have a chat with you. So thank you so much for making yourself available and for giving us so much time. I wish you all the best, not just for this season, but also obviously with the Kiwis. There is a lot of support, I think, when your name was announced as the coach of the Kiwis, and a lot of the league community across Aotearoa will just feel a sense of pride at having one of their own, particularly Māori league communities, having one of their own as the coach of the Kiwis, and someone who's committed and contributed so much to the game. Thank you, Stacey. Really appreciate it.
Tēnā koe, Julian, and much appreciated for the interview. I really enjoyed it, but thank you.
Kia ora, maita. It was Stacey Jones, the one and only Stacey Jones, the new coach of the Kiwis, and one of the greatest Kiwis to ever play the game of rugby league. That is us for this week. Join us next week for more from Māpuna. I hope you appreciated and enjoyed the kōrero. Probably not as much as I did, which I think has become very obvious. And apologies for that. Nō reira, kia taunga manaki tanga ki runga i a koutou katoa. We've got a pretty special show next week, which we will promote throughout this week as well. E kia ana te kōrero ko te toka i Ākiha, he toka whitianga rā. Ko te toka i Māpuna, ko tāu e kite ai, ko te ripukau. Ti he wa mauri ora, kia tātou katoa.